America. Good morning, Rise in Freedom. It's time for the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. I'm your host, AP. Thanks for joining me. Happy Wednesday. You've heard about the trend of employees quiet quitting, but now employers are now playing the reverse card, quiet firing. What is it, and how can you know if you're being quiet fired? We'll discuss it at the top of the show. And my friend Sydney Watson had a bad experience on American Airlines when she was placed between two obese people and had to fly squash between them. What would you do underneath this scenario? I'll just tell you, it didn't go well for poor Sydney. And John Miltimore from the Foundation of Economic Education joins us at 7:30 to discuss a proposal to nationalize Starlink if Elon Musk refuses to continue to pay out of pocket to provide internet to Ukraine. Imagine yourself, you have a business that you started for yourself, and the government just deems it necessary and just takes it away from you. Is there a precedent for things like this? Well, sadly there is, and Miltimore will explain it to us this morning at 7:30. And at 8 a.m. today, Judge Andrew Napolitano returns to the show to give us his legal take on the nearly $1 billion Alex Jones verdict. Is this a free speech issue, or should the famed conspiracy theory podcaster have to pay up? And at 8:30 a.m. today, Missouri Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick joins us to talk about his decision to pull Missouri pension funds out of Blackrock over their ESG policies. All that and more on this special episode of the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Thanks so much for joining us on the program today. Today is Rumble Wednesday, so if you are capable and able and have an account, please join us over at rumble.com. My account name over there is like it is pretty much almost everywhere except for on Twitch. It's AP4Liberty. That's AP, the number 4, AP4Liberty. So if you would join us over at rumble.com, I would be sincerely grateful. Of course, you're free to join us on any of the platforms that you prefer to use, just like Melissa Roysden, who's over there this morning, who says, do they factor outsourcing and automation in these quiet firing trends? That is a really good question, Melissa, and I truly don't know the answer to that. If somebody else does, they're free to text into the show at 573-319-1586. Yes, the text line is open at 573-319-1586. We'd love to hear from our listeners over text or many other opportunities to interact with us. Wood Hippie already texting us this morning. He says he saw the topic of fat while flying. How about our society simultaneously celebrating fat and hating fat? Kanye is right. How celebrating fat is demonic. I'll accept your demonic and I'll raise a satanic. How about that, Wood Hippie? Another listener texted in yesterday after our conversation with Matt Roja from Salon Magazine and says that it was interesting to see an adult with autism. I wonder what kind of lives autistic kids I know will have. Yesterday, we had a really great interview with a gentleman who was a writer for Salon Magazine by the name of Matt Roja, and we were discussing a little bit about libertarianism and autism. He considers himself a leftist with autism. It's a great interview. I'm going to try and cut it by the end of today so you can see it if you haven't, but of course, the archives are out there. Of course, the show also airs in a podcast form. You can listen to the podcast later if you want to download it on any of your mobile devices, but if you want to listen to the show while we're live and not watch it, there is an audio-only stream over at wakeupAmericaShow.com. So if you weren't aware, there is a live stream, just audio, at wakeupAmericaShow.com on the front page. You just have to head to the website and go and check it out. All right, quiet quitting. I always try and keep my economic topics to the top of the show because I know a lot of this stuff affects us more than some of the other issues. Not as many people fly, for example, as have a job. But the 83% of workers have seen or experienced quiet firing. And some of our friends over at CNBC have written an article about 7 signs to look for if you've noticed your boss isn't acknowledging your hard work and contributions like they used to. They might be quiet firing you. So quiet firing is somewhat of a response to quiet quitting, which if you're a regular on the Wake Up America show, then you know it's a topic that we've discussed quite frequently. What is quiet quitting? Let's define that very quickly. Quiet quitting is not what a lot of people think it is, where it's like you don't do your job at all. Quiet quitting is essentially you doing exactly what you were hired for, and no more. You see, in America, if you're listening to us from overseas, we have a hustle culture where if you have a job, typically you're expected to go above and beyond, meaning that you do your job plus. And I'll tell you, in my experience, pretty much every job that I've had, it was never allowed to just do the basic minimum, meaning that once you got hired for a job, you immediately got placed all these job responsibilities that were never put in your job description. Quiet quitting is a response to that here in the United States. I don't know what's going on overseas, but I'll tell you, a lot of people here in the United States are deciding to quiet quit, meaning that they're doing the absolute basic minimum in order to keep their job and completing their job responsibilities, as was required on them when they were hired. So if you were hired to do such and such, this and that, whatever your list of your job description was, you do that and you do only that. If you were hired to do 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 or what have you, you do Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. You don't stick around at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m. And there's been a backlash to this. Mr. Wonderful from the television show Shark Tank, which I'm a big fan of, love that show. But he's gone out there and criticized employees who are quiet quitting, saying that, I'm not interested in hiring people whose laptop shuts off at 5 or 6 p.m. or what have you, whatever, normal quitting time is, because he expects his employees to work from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. essentially. And that's been the norm. That's been the norm for a long time here in the United States, but people's priorities have changed during the pandemic. And a lot of people have been engaging in this trend of quiet quitting. And that's why we've also been having this discussion on the program about how middle management are really struggling with the ability to determine how productive their employees are. And as I've been reading many of the business periodicals on this topic, CEOs have made different suggestions about, exactly how to measure their employees' productivity. The productivity before was measured by how long were you in the office, how many hours were in the office. And for those of us who, have either worked remotely or who are very technologically literate, I'll just say that it's obviously for us, we knew a long time ago that just hours spent in the chair in your butt didn't prove that you were productive. There are plenty of people who sit their butt in their chair at the office for hours and hours and hours and are unproductive, right? But productivity has to be measured some way, right? If you're in sales, it might be a lot easier to determine, hey, well, how many, boxes are you shipping out at the end of the day? But in other jobs, it's a lot more difficult to be able to determine exactly how productive an employee is. But in response to this trend of employees quiet quitting their job, now many employers are turning to quiet firing, which could get them into a lot of trouble because of employment laws. We'll get more into that a little bit later. But some of the signs that you want to be looking out for, if your boss is quiet firing you, right, are things like you haven't seen a salary increase after 1 or 2 years. Now, I keep bringing this up, and I keep hearing from our listeners on this one who have miraculously they've gotten pay increases at their jobs. I don't know what that is like. And maybe it's just because of the sort of the nature of the beast of the businesses that I've worked for. But what I have heard from a lot of people in my generation, I was born in 1981, is that the only way that they've been able to see pay increases in their life has been to move to another job. That's been the case for me. And the quicker you move, the faster you move through your jobs, the faster your pay increases. Despite this new terminology, quiet firing is a concept that's existed for quite some time. There was a recent poll that came out with over 20,000 respondents that found that 48% of employees have seen quiet firing in the workplace, and 35% have faced it during their careers. Have you ever been in this situation where you were wondering, am I going to get fired? Am I going to get fired? Send me a text, 573-319-1586. I think this idea of quiet firing is done unintentionally or subconsciously a lot by managers who are kind of fearful or they're hesitant to give direct feedback if things aren't going well with an employee. That certainly could be the case. Managers who know that someone is not working out and know they want them to leave might just ignore them in hopes that they will leave on their own. And of course, that's a very unhealthy thing. But here are some of the things that from my list that you might want to look out for, if you're wondering whether or not you might be getting quote unquote quiet fired. And that first one, of course, not seeing a salary increase after 1 or 2 years. That, to me, is not normal. I wouldn't say that that's a sign that that's not normal, but I wonder what you think about this one, the whole not getting a salary increase, because, maybe I've just had stingy bosses, or maybe I just was terrible at my job. Sometimes you got to cast up the mirror of self-reflection, but I'm pretty sure I'm great at my job. It's just, it's a shame that, I think I want to blame external factors because, of course, who wants to blame themselves? But I prefer to think that the issue is simply that, the only way to really get a pay increase is to move on to another job. And because so many other people in my demographic have reported the same thing, I'm going to do that instead of blaming myself and poor work ethic. How can you have poor work ethic and get up at 4 a.m. every day? Number 2, you don't receive any meaningful feedback from your manager. I can see this going both ways because, if you don't receive any meaningful feedback, it could mean that you're doing your job right, but it could also just be that your manager doesn't really see much point in trying to coach you along. Number 3, your manager avoids engaging with you. That is really awkward. Have you ever had that in a scenario where a manager just simply did not engage with you at all? I wouldn't know what to do with something like that, but what would you do? Have you ever been in a situation where a manager is just not interacting with you? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. I see I've got a lot of friends over on Rumble this morning. Glad to see you, Chris Morrill, One Patriot listener. Good morning to you. Clementine, Chris Morrill, Brashing is there this morning. Steffi for Liberty, my beautiful wife, is there. And good morning, Tolly. Nice to see you, as well as Kay Vandy. It's Rumble Day. That's right, the best day. Good morning. Good morning. Glad to have you here. We're talking about signs that you might be getting quiet fired. Number 4 on this list here is you've been singled out to answer tough questions at team or company meetings. That's a tough one. Never had that kind of situation that I can remember, being singled out to answer tough questions, right? Being put on the spot, right? Maybe in order to sort of, if a manager wants to justify that there might be a firing upcoming, then they put you on the spot to see how you might perform in that kind of a scenario. Not quite sure about that one. Hasn't happened to me before. I wonder about you. Send me a text, 573-319-1586. Today is Rumble Wednesday. So if you're able to, or if you're interested, I'd love it if you would join us over on Rumble. We'd love to have you over there. But of course, you can. We'll never quit AP4, says Michael Nip. Good morning, Michael. Thank you for joining us this morning. Jose Palacios over on YouTube. We love to see you this morning. And of course, Rare Camellia over there as well. So she's excited that we have the Missouri State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick on the program this morning. He's going to be joining us this morning at 8:30 a.m. It's going to be great. We're going to talk to him about him divesting Missouri State pensions from Blackrock. I think it was over $100 million worth of pensions that was pulled from Blackrock over their environmental, social, and governance policies. We'll be talking about that a little bit more later on the program at 8:30. Yes, it's going to be great. Another sign that you might be getting quiet fired is number 5 here is your ideas are disregarded. This probably happens all the time anyway, so you probably have to have a conjunction of many of these in order to really zero in on the idea that you might be getting quiet fired. Your ideas are disregarded. I mean, gosh, whose ideas haven't been disregarded at the workplace? Number 6, you aren't being challenged or given additional opportunities and projects. That's not bad, but I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Number 7, you're left out of meetings, events, and or social gatherings. Now, this is the one I wanted to latch onto. If you have a job and you're being left out of meetings, events, and or social gatherings, I don't know about you, but I would just be delighted to be left out of meetings, events, and or social gatherings. Now, if that's a sign that you're being quiet fired, then I say maybe it's a good time to start looking for another job or to start working on your side hustle more. But still, let me ask you something. How much would you love not being included in your company's meetings, events, or social gatherings? I can say from the times that I've worked for the man, not having to go to a meeting was one of the highlights of my day. Now, maybe it meant I was getting quiet fired. Who knows? Coming up next at 7:22, fat on a plane. Have you ever had this situation? You get on an airplane and you're stuck between two obese people? It happened to my friend Sydney Watson of The Blaze, and boy, she had a really interesting scenario occur afterwards. She was blamed for this problem. You know, little skinny Sydney. We'll talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
It's morning again in America. Our country is prouder and stronger and better.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion, delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table, or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. It's Austin Petersen on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We're glad to have you. Today's Rumble Wednesday. So if you've got Rumble, you've downloaded it, or you get on a computer and you're watching us, head over to rumble.com and join us at the account AP for Liberty. That's AP, the number 4, AP for Liberty. I see we've got 35 people watching us now over there. It just seems like the audience just keeps growing and growing and growing. I'm so thankful to all of our listeners who have supported the show and people who have joined in and contributed financially to help us get to where we are today, especially people like Lyle and Lori Rossberg, people like Edie Vogel, people like Camelia Petersen, John Combest, so many others have stepped up and made financial contributions to this program. I wouldn't have time to list them all today because there are so many of you, but I do appreciate you. Tony Allegra and many others. Don't worry, you will be getting Christmas cards this year. So I just want to say thank you so much for helping to support my dream to be independent and to spread the ideas of limited government to people all around the country and around the world who watch the Wake Up America show. I've got so many exciting things going on behind the scenes that I can't talk about just yet. I wish I could. I've got like something that's just on the tip of my tongue, just this big announcement that I want to make. And it's so exciting and fun. And I don't want to jinx it. Thank God my desk is wood. I just want it to come through so that I can tell you about it. I can't yet because the ink hasn't been signed, as you might say. It's a metaphor, or maybe it's literal. An airline stunning flip after a woman claims she was trapped between overweight people. What is going wrong with Australia these days? I don't know, but I was reading this article, and the way that the article sounded, it made it sound like Sydney Watson, my friend from The Blaze, was the one who was in the wrong. Now, when I was reading this article, this is from the New York Post, we can also talk about air travel pet peeves, which I found a really good list as well. Clipping toenails on board a flight is too much for some people, says the New York Post. This is for their airline pet peeves. I've never seen somebody clipping their toenails, but I've definitely seen people do weird and gross stuff on airlines. And that's why when Steffi and I were flying back the other day from Florida, I just called it, she's like, I love flying, it's so romantic. And she's talking about how much she loves to fly. She loves to look out the window and all this stuff. She has these romantic ideas, and I've flown so much in my life that I'm just over it. I call it an Airbus because that's essentially what it is. It's kind of, like a cattle car these days. It's like being on a bus in the air. It's, imagine how romantic you feel when you're like, oh, we're going to go get on a bus and we're going to go to somewhere, whatever. But, flights have essentially become Airbuses these days. Anyway, so this is the New York Post writing this, originally published in an Australian periodical. I don't like the way that they worded this. Tell me if this ticks you off too. A conservative commentator shut down after foul rant about sitting between two overweight people on a short flight has received an unexpected token of goodwill from the airline. Sydney Watson, as most of you know her, they call her a right-wing American-Australian political journalist who is no stranger to controversial subjects. How do I do an Australian accent? I can't remember. Crikey. Put another shrimp on the barbie. Took to Twitter last month. I'm afraid I'm going to screw this up. Well, Australian is one of the few accents that I can't do. I can do Irish, German, British, 3 or 4 different types of British dialects. I can do all kinds of American dialects, and I can do Russian, but for some reason, I can't do Australian. It's too close to British for me to be able to do it. Anyways, so Sydney got on Twitter after she had this horrible flight where she was stuck between two obese people. And she said, if you need a seatbelt extender, you are too fat to be on a plane. And then the Australian periodical went on to say her offensive comments came after she was seated between obese siblings on a 3-hour American Airlines flight, during which she claimed she was being touched throughout. Oh, God. See, I don't like being touched by people I don't know at all. Anyways, I don't have necessarily a phobia about it. I don't know about you, but I cannot, there's nothing worse than being stuck in the middle seat. For me, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this. What do you prefer? Are you an aisle seat? Are you, a window seat? Because I am an aisle person through and through. Does it suck getting your, banged on the cart with a stewardess when she walks by? Yes. Does it suck that every person who walks by you is going to, wake you up and knock into you as they're going back to the bathroom? Absolutely. But if I got to pee, I don't want to have to give somebody the butt or the crotch as I walk by there in the middle seat. I don't want to have to get out and wake people up and all that stuff. But, what are you? Are you an aisle or a window? Let me know. 573-319-1586. One listener texted in, Wood Hippie said, fat people didn't get fat because I ate too much. They got fat because they ate more calories than they expended. Simple, not mean. Wood Hippie is sick of this victim culture. Move your ass, period. Breathe. Enjoy life. Amen, Wood Hippie. But don't forget that part of being an American means being able to drink as many sugary sodas as you want and blow up to 500 pounds. You just don't get to blame other people or, ask them to pay for your health care. Except you do, because America's a socialist nation these days. You can text the show at 573-319-1586. Chris Morrill says he likes flying, but he hates airports. Yeah, I hate that too. Brashing says he's had 2 emotional support dogs charge each other from across the plane and get in a brawl right in my feet. Whoa, God, that's crazy. You can text us in or send us a comment over on Rumble. We'd love to hear from you on this topic at 573-319-1586. I can, you can too, says that obesity is the real pandemic. Well, pandemic denotes worldwide. This is an American problem. Overconsumption is our pastime. Very true. Brashing says some airlines are supposed to have you buy 2 seats if you're that big, but it is never enforced. That's what I think the solution should have to be, that you have to buy 2 seats. You shouldn't have to be stuck in between 2 people. What I think this is that political correctness has made it so that it's impossible for a stewardess to call somebody out for saying, hey, listen, you're overweight. They probably are worried about themselves maybe getting sued if they call a passenger out for being too fat on a flight. But, American Airlines say that they don't discriminate against body types. The Twitter account for American Airlines posted a tweet saying, our passengers come in all shapes and sizes. We're sorry that you were uncomfortable on your flight. This was their response to Sydney Watson when she was stuck in the middle of a flight. Shrimp on the Barbie is my go-to, says Anna Tom. Yes. Paul Marone over on YouTube says, hit the like button, viewers. It helps. It absolutely does. If you're watching us over on YouTube this morning, I would be super grateful if you would give us a like. I'd be super grateful. Again, if you don't want to join us on Rumble, then YouTube is preferred. It doesn't stay up, says Matt Unruly. No problem. And Tony Legger says, I am a window seat if it's a red eye and I'm sleeping. Aisle seat for the quick hop flights. You know what, Tony? That is good thinking there. That's actually good advice. What do you think? Have you got any good flight advice for terrible flights? What are your flight hacks? I'd love to hear that. 573-319-1586. Your flight hacks. Now, apparently in a gesture of goodwill, Sydney Watson received a $150 trip credit and an email that says, I can understand your disappointment with the situation not being remedied to your satisfaction. The picture, though, of Sydney on the flight, let me see if I can actually pull this up for you. Let's head over to I had this Twitter weirdness scene set up for you on something else. I'm going to go ahead and pull over our Twitter weirdness. Please excuse the fact that I've got your another video pulled up there for you. Let's head on over to transition to that, and I'll give you a window capture and pull up the browser so you can see. Actually, you know what? I can do this in a little easier way. I can go ahead and pull up for you over here. There we go. Boom. Take a look. So if you're watching us now live, then you can see here's Sydney. Now take a look at this. You can see here that there she is with her little, right there. That's her. Now look at this monstrous arm pushing over right into her. And this is just on one side, right? She's got this on the other side as well. There's the other side. Boom, she's stuck in between them. I mean, yikes. That would be quite uncomfortable. She says that she was wedged between 2 obese people. on my flight. She says it's not acceptable or okay. If fat people want to be fat, fine, but it's something else entirely when I'm stuck between you with your arm rolls on my body for 3 hours. Well, see, now what would they do if they'd stuck 1, 2, 3 fat people all in together? I mean, God, I know that sounds like a terrible, evil, mean thing to do, but quite frankly, I'm kind of tired of, having to accommodate for other people all of the time. It's not something that we should have to do. What do you think? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. We've got a great program for you today. Coming up next, we're going to talk to John Miltimore, for the managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education. We're going to talk to him about nationalizing Elon Musk's Starlink. Yeah, that's what Republicans are proposing. A Republican is proposing. I'm sure plenty of Republicans agree with that. What do you think? We'll talk about it when we get back on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here, and we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Wife. I want to thank you all for watching the Wake Up America Show with Austin Petersen. This show has been a huge venture for our family, so we would love it if you could join us.
I believe in liberty, and I believe in Austin's ability to spread the ideas of liberty. Do you?
I want to ask you today to join Petersen's Patriots with a pledge of $17.76 a month. Help us to stay cancel-proof so we can spread the message of limited government across the country. I joined Petersen's Patriots myself, just in a little different way. Visit wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and make your pledge today.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Displayed proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul, made a big investment in chips just before Congress votes on a bill that would give $52 billion in subsidies and tax credits to the chip industry.
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he received from you?
No.
And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back. Do not come. Do not come.
Have you ever received a royalty payment from a company that you later oversaw money going to that company?
You know, I don't know as a fact, but I doubt it.
Well, here's the thing is, why don't you let us know?
Good morning at 7:37, and you're watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen. It's time to rise and freedom. Should we nationalize Starlink? Elon Musk paid out of pocket to help save Ukraine from the Russian invasion by offering free internet service in the country while they were on the brink of war. Now that Elon Musk is saying he can't afford to pay for it out of pocket, a Republican, a very prominent Republican or speechwriter, maybe he's no longer a Republican anymore, David Frum has said that if Starlink doesn't continue to provide free service, then the U.S. government should nationalize it. There's got to be a better way to do this. Joining me now to discuss this topic is the managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education, John Miltimore, on the line right now. Good morning, John. Thanks for joining us on the program again. Glad to have you.
Hey, good morning, AP. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. So what's the story here behind David Frum's proposal?
Yeah, Frum wasn't really, beating around the bush. He just, I think partly Musk's position on Ukraine have made some people angry. Musk has made it clear he's not really a fan of the war and has been talking about trying to, have peace over there. I think Frum took that as like, if you're not going to provide us free internet service, we're gonna take it. And that's really what he proposed. He said there's a lot of precedent for the U.S. government during periods of war just to seize property. And he does have the caveat. He thinks Musk should be or not Musk. He thinks Musk should be compensated, by the government for the seizure. But I wrote an article on it. I think Frum's way. And again, he tweeted this at like midnight. I think Frum was probably a drink or two in and decided to, fire off a tweet, and it got a lot of attention. But it's a really dangerous idea. And here's the thing: we're not at war in Ukraine. That's a big difference. Even, I think all these the precedents that he cites, they were bad anyway. But at least America was fighting a war. This isn't even our war in Ukraine.
Yeah, former George W. Bush speechwriter David Frum said the federal government should have a plan ready to nationalize Starlink fast in case Musk doesn't want to play ball in Ukraine. See, Musk had claimed that SpaceX had already eaten $80 million in costs for the operation, and they're expected to spend about $100 million by the end of the year. He's just flat out says that he's spending too much money there. He asked the Pentagon to step up and spend it, but I mean, John, the problem with that, of course, is that the Pentagon is really just you and me.
Yeah, no, it'd be a bill that shifts to taxpayers, and that's kind of the irony here. Before Frum fired off this tweet, it looked like, Musk had actually put in a proposal, SpaceX had put in a proposal in September to have the Pentagon have these costs shifted to the Pentagon. CNN got that report and did a story on it. Musk, in tweets made it pretty clear he wasn't happy with the situation, but he has since, recanted, or rescinded that report and said, no, don't worry about it. And the Pentagon has said talks are happening. So I think you're right. I think that there's kind of some agreement here that's going to happen without having to seize Starlink. But, apparently that wasn't enough for Frum. Like just the idea that that Musk is taking this approach, he's talking about seizing the property. And it shows like during war, crazy stuff happened. And I think we often forget, it's during periods of war, the gravest, civil liberty abrogations happen during these periods of conflict, and you see why. Winning becomes the only goal. Any collateral damage, we can live with that, but we need to win. So we're gonna do what we have to do that. And again, I'll go back. The irony is we're not even fighting in Ukraine. It's not our war, but you still see the same mindset that anything that can be done must be done because it's for the cause.
If you're just tuning in to the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen, we are speaking with John Miltimore. John is the managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education, and we're talking about Elon Musk's Starlink and the proposal to nationalize it. Now, when Frum said that there is a precedent for seizing property during war, but there being just compensation, he's absolutely right about that. I think you wrote in your piece about Harry Truman seizing U.S. Steel. I don't think that was during the war, but I'm not entirely sure on the timeline there. But
during the Korean War.
The Korean War. Okay, so fill us in on the history of government theft.
Yeah, no, I mean, I rattle off a few there. You had Wilson, all the railroads were nationalized. Again, that came after Congress had actually, expanded presidential power. But you have other precedents. The steel mills were a big one. There's a big Supreme Court case over that one. I believe, I'll have to look back, so don't quote me on this. I believe Truman lost that case. But yeah, it's no secret this has been happening for a long time. I think it's important to understand just because historical precedent allowed something doesn't mean it's a good idea. And I talked about that a little bit. If you look, Woodrow Wilson was also, during World War I, the Sedition Act was prosecuting people for speaking out against the government. FDR threw people in internment camps. It was really the same reasoning. Civil liberties have to go out the window because we're fighting a war. So all of these, is there precedent for doing these things? Yes. Does it mean it's a good idea? Absolutely not. And again, I think Frum was wrong about even the context is different. We're not in Ukraine. It's just I'm not even sure how much Ukraine is formally an ally of ours. Do we think it was a egregious thing that Putin invaded Ukraine? Of course. But that doesn't mean we have to spend either American blood or treasure in the conflict.
We're speaking to John Miltimore, the managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education. You can text the show at 573-319-1586. One listener texted in and says, if Ukraine has billions, they can choose to pay the bill. Someone tries to nationalize my property, they better stand clear when I blow it up. And if corrupt dictators have a claim with the IMF, so will I. You can send in your text as well at 573-319-1586. Our listeners are joining us today over on Rumble at rumble.com. It's Rumble Wednesday. Head over there. Our account is AP for Liberty over on Rumble. Brashing over on Rumble said that this is why you never give the government anything for free. You give an inch and they demand a mile. Probably a good point, John.
Amen. No, I agree. I mean, you got to kind of hand it to Musk. He saw this, was putting a lot of SpaceX resources, up for nothing. After maybe you hit $100 million, you're like, okay, like this is getting steep. And I think the dynamics of that we don't know how long this war is going to last. I think when this war started, there was this idea, like it often is in wars, this is going to be over in a few weeks. Well, that's not the case, and it's getting, going on longer and longer. So I mean, even Frum concedes it's not reasonable to expect Elon Musk to sit there and keep, picking up the tab. He just thinks it's an easier solution to take the property. And it's interesting, me and Frum shared something. I was actually a low-level flunky in the Bush White House speechwriting department myself many years ago. Frum departed shortly before I arrived, and he was a much higher ranking official than I was. He was a full-blown speechwriter. But even then, I think he had a reputation. People didn't like him. He was kind of this guy. He was considered arrogant and kind of a bully. And you see it in this approach, right? You see this approach he's taking, like, no, we'll just take the property. And I think that's often the case with government. They just think, like, no, we have the power. We're going to do it. I don't think in this case there's going to be an appetite for that for a lot of reasons. But just the fact it's being discussed is kind of a little scary, in my opinion.
I guess we need to read your bio a little bit more closely here. Yeah, John Miltimore not only is the managing editor of FEE, but he also served in editorial roles at the History Channel magazine, Intellectual Takeout and Scout, as well as an intern in the speechwriting department of George W. Bush. What was that like, John?
I can't talk about it much. I'm a libertarian, today. It's interesting. You did get a up close look at some of the things going on, but this was when the war on terror was happening. And, it's funny, like, I'll be honest, I had reservations then about some of the things that were being done, but like anything, you put on your hat, you go to work. Like, overall, the experience was a real good one. I met a lot of good people. I think my own views changed probably by about 2005, maybe 2006. It was sort of after I departed that my whole view of sort of the approach we took in Iraq and Afghanistan changed. And I think my experience out there probably had something to do with it. What you saw was a bunch of people that thought they were doing a good thing, that they believed that this is going to bring peace to the Middle East and it was going to be transformational. None of that happened. And I think a lot of people just said, well, we meant well. Well, to me, that wasn't a very good answer. And you have to kind of look back and say, well, how did we get here? Was it just something we did wrong, or was this wrong from the beginning? And for me, it was actually part of my own libertarian journey.
Wow, that's quite fascinating, John. Maybe we should have a longer discussion about that sometime. Unfortunately, we got to go. John Miltimore, managing editor of the Foundation for Economic Education. We love your weekly contributions to the show, John. You're a great writer, and your contributions to liberty have not gone unnoticed. We certainly appreciate you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Austin. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Do you like John Miltimore? Send us a text at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. All right, when we get back, Carrie Lake got my attention with the way she handled the fake news media yesterday. I've got a video clip of her telling them off that is so sweet and yet so spicy. On the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
I enlisted as a medic to be there to help my patients, and after an injury, I found myself as a patient. I experienced post-traumatic seizures. Depression is a big one that comes along with it, PTSD. So I pursued my PhD in neuroscience and regenerative medicine. The coalition has helped fund my academic pursuits. They genuinely care about helping the vet in whatever way that they can. Through supporting the coalition, you're supporting some of the veterans that have the biggest needs.
Visit SaluteHeroes.org to learn more.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun. Thank you very much.
Enough yet? Do facts no longer matter? Are lies to be encouraged instead of punished? This is not our inheritance. If truth no longer matters, we will not remain free for long. This is our generation's challenge, to defend our founders' hope that we the people could self-govern if we defend our right to get the facts. And right now, we're building the only defense of free people have. The facts on every politician, every position they held, every statement they've made, every vote they've made, and any cash they've taken. It's the real history on those now pandering for your vote. There are hundreds of young people building our defense right now, and they need your help. We all have our passions, but as our ancestors knew, when events become so foul they threaten us all, we must stand and defend each other. Please, have our backs. Join us at votesmart.org.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter. Male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers. We have leaders in business.
Is me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
Halloween is coming. The festival of Samhain approaches, and your lazy butt doesn't have a Halloween costume yet? How can you pledge allegiance to the Dark Lord this year and possibly offend everyone at the same time? Visit the AP for Liberty shop and get your shirt today. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government, and I'm here to help. So grab your government is scary tea and tell everyone at the party that you're here to help. Other great seasonal items are available as well, so don't miss out. Then visit AP for Liberty Shop today. That's apforlibertyshop.com.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. It's 7:53, and you're watching the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Did you like John Miltimore from the Foundation for Economic Education? Fee.org is a great website. I highly recommend them. I've actually started writing for them myself. They do a terrific job at spreading great information about limited government, economic freedom, and personal liberty. So I highly recommend fee.org. That's FEE.org. And I'm certainly grateful for their contributions through John Miltimore on a weekly basis. All right, let's talk about this lady, Kari Lake. She's a former Phoenix, Arizona TV news anchor. She's kind of emerged as a Republican phenomenon by amplifying the Donald Trump stolen election mythos and embracing some pretty hard right politics on abortion and immigration. So she sounds great. Sure has the Washington Post ticked off, though. Reading this morning, they say that she is lying about the stolen election. What was fascinating to me is that I saw this video of her yesterday where she was approached about the whole stolen election mystery with the 2020 election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Let's head over to our Twitter weirdness segment where we show our clips and all of the weird things that I find on Twitter. And this is probably, again, and it's titled this, the best I've ever seen at dressing down liberal media. Let's take a listen and watch as Kari Lake responds to the questions about the stolen election. Take a listen to this.
Well, actually, I have to give you a tough one once in a while.
He seems pretty tough. Well, watch this.
I did a little, actually, Anthony, how old are you? 20. Are you a journalist? No. Well, you did better research than half these people.
Ouch.
Let's talk about election deniers.
Ooh,
Here's
here we go.
150 examples of Democrats denying election results. Oh, wow, look at this. This is from Joe Biden's press secretary. Reminder, Brian Kemp stole the gubernatorial election from Georgians and Stacey Abrams. Democrats saying that. Is that an election denier?
Sure.
Oh, look at this.
And let's just pause for a moment. I got to say that I really like the setup that she has here for Black Voices for Kari. She's got all these African Americans standing behind her in support. That's pretty powerful. There you go, Kari. Continue on.
Republican Ryan Costello said it would be difficult for Stacey Abrams to win because she lost her state bid, but yet she's still claiming she never lost. This is outrageous. Hillary Clinton. Trump is an illegitimate president. Is she an election denier? This one says,
well, and what's fascinating to me about the whole stolen election thing is, do I think that the 2020 election was stolen? No. Were there instances of voter fraud across the country in certain states? Sure. Enough to overturn the election? No. And the reason why I think that is because Republican electors were the ones who were recertifying the elections when they did recounts. So, I mean, you'd have to say that the Republicans who were doing the recounts were lying about it. And I don't think that they were. But, the reason why I think that prominent Republicans are advancing, the stolen election idea is because they want to get on Trump's good side, and because you have to say that in order to get on Donald Trump's good side. And it's kind of a gatekeeping thing, right? You're not a real Republican, or you're not real MAGA if you don't believe the stolen election drew. Now, I know that we've got people listening to me like Edie Vogel and probably Wood Hippie and many of my other conservative friends who disagree with me on that. They think that the election was stolen, and they take those into account, those incidents where people actually did commit voter fraud, and say that this is examples of why the election was stolen. But I don't think that that's the case. You can have instances of voter fraud that don't necessarily amount to enough to steal an election. Have there been stolen elections in American history? Absolutely. It's just that the presidency is the hardest to steal of all because of the Electoral College and because of the nature of how every single state conducts a separate election. And so it would be damn near impossible to steal the presidency in such a way, a Manchurian candidate notwithstanding. Anyways, I want to continue on because she does a great job here at addressing this, because I think that, it's not just whataboutism to paint the fact that in 2016, after that election, that the Democrats all came out unilaterally to say that it was a stolen election because of Russian interference. They still believe that. They still say that. But what really angers me is the fact that they never got banned from social media for saying that. They never had their opinions pushed aside. They were never, there are people who I know that can't use Twitter or Facebook because they think that, and I disagree with them, but they believe that Joe Biden and his people stole the election in 2020. Those people have been banned from social media. Nobody ever got banned for suggesting that Donald Trump stole the election in 2016. Let's continue on because I really like this lady. She's fiery. She's tough.
Was the 2016 election legitimate? It now definitely is a question worth asking. That's the Los Angeles Times.
Yeah.
So it's okay for Democrats to question elections.
And the funny thing is you can go back and you could see that article and probably see it posted on Facebook, and there's no fact check underneath it, right? I post a meme of SpongeBob SquarePants, and it's got a fact check underneath it, right? But the Los Angeles Times promotes that blatant misinformation. There's no fact check.
But it's not okay for Republicans. It's a crock of BS. Every one of you knows it. We have our freedom of speech, and we're not going to relinquish it to a bunch of fake news propagandists.
Amen, lady. Amen. I love to see it. All right. Well, I had another clip I was going to play for you. Maybe I'll do it later. But speaking of free speech, we are going to talk to Judge Andrew Napolitano about free speech. He's going to join us at 8:05. We're going to talk to him about Alex Jones and free speech. Ooh, that's going to be spicy. It's going to be a good one. We'll be back with the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Hello, my name is Kelvin. Welcome to Frenchy Bush. This is my Didi's website. Now I've decided to speak to you with my real voice for the first time ever to tell you about how cool Frenchy Bush is. But I've decided that this is the perfect opportunity to share with you. Frenchy Bush is a good website. You should follow us on socials. If you like Frenchies or any kind of bulldogs, me and my new brother George are going to try to make your life more fun.
Hello, I'm George. My neck isn't really thick yet, but it will be. We are so glad you're here. Please ignore my floating eyeball. It helps me spot predators who might be approaching from the sides.
Didi made Frenchy Bush to review things that he uses on me and my brother to tell you if it's good or bullshit. Take this collar, for example. Didi really likes it. Didi said it's really handy because us Frenchies got thick necks. Need something really tough. People think Frenchies are little, but if you look at us from below, you can see we are really pretty buff. Beefcake. Yes. Look at my creamy thighs and chest. Yes. You like that?
Big brother, please focus.
Frenchy Bush. Please follow us for more great content and read the Frenchy Bush blog for more fun and cool stuff.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
Any real-world experience.
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway. You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Petersen, and you're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Free speech versus defamation. What we say, can it be held against us? Well, if you're Alex Jones, apparently so. Democrats can say whatever they want. They can spread, Donald Trump stole the election from Hillary Clinton in 2016. If conservatives try and say it back, well, they need to be suppressed online. Let's talk about this nearly $1 billion judgment with my good friend, the judge. His name is Judge Andrew Napolitano. He is the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which you can download on any of your favorite podcasting networks. And he is also the author of a weekly column, which you can read at judgenap.com. He's joining us right now, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Good morning, Judge. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning, Austin, my dear friend. Thanks for having me with you. I look forward to these Wednesday mornings. There was emptiness in my heart last week when you were away.
Thank you, Judge. We're glad to have you here. The story of the day is nearly $1 billion will be extracted from Alex Jones if this verdict is upheld in the case of Sandy Hook parents who sued him for defamation. My father, contacted me about this last week and said that, he's no big Alex Jones fan, but something just doesn't sit well with him about this. And I sort of feel the same way, Judge. What are your thoughts on this case? You think that this will be upheld?
I don't think it will be upheld, but it's going to have to go all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, because without getting too into the weeds, the judicial system in the state of Connecticut has carved out an Alex Jones exception to the general protection, the First Amendment protection for the expression of opinions. So everybody knows what we're talking about. We're talking about a monumental tragedy and horrific crime where a crazy young man took a weapon that he found in his parents' home and slaughtered 20 children and 6 adults at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. Alex Jones expressed the opinion that this was staged, but who believes the government anyway? Why should we believe them now? And he threw out some snippets of odd behavior by the people surrounding this to support the opinion. Of course, it wasn't staged. It was real. There was real suffering, real death, real horror, real terror. But Alex Jones expressed an opinion on a matter of public interest. The matter of public interest was a public massacre, the right to keep and bear arms, mental health, safety in schools, free speech. And when the surviving parents of these slaughtered children sued Alex Jones for defamation and for intentional infliction of emotional distress, and Jones's lawyers moved to dismiss the complaint on the grounds that his speech was protected by the First Amendment, as all opinions are when you give a reason for the opinion. I'm going to jump aside for a minute. The value of an opinion on a matter of public interest challenges the orthodox belief in the matter of public interest, and causes people to look at it in a different way. And that advances the goals of democracy, which is public policy based on an examination of all issues. That's the reason that we protect opinion. But when Alex Jones moved to dismiss the case and somebody planted child pornography in the digitized version of the documents that Alex Jones was compelled to send to the plaintiffs, and Jones accused the plaintiffs' lawyers of doing it, the judge was so outraged at this, not at the presence of child pornography, but at Alex's allegation that the plaintiffs' lawyers had planted it, that she denied the motion to dismiss, not on the merits. She didn't examine the law. She didn't examine the Supreme Court opinions. She didn't examine what I just explained is the reason why opinions are protected. She sounded like George Orwell when she said, this is not an opinion, it's a non-opinion, and therefore it's not protected. And the Supreme Court of Connecticut, in a 7-0 vote, upheld that. So there never was a trial on the merits. There never was a legal argument on the merits. There was just a judicial determination that what Alex said was so outrageous that it's a non-opinion, therefore it's not protected, therefore he loses as a matter of law, therefore the only issue is how much money does he owe? And between the two trials over what he owes, one in Austin, Texas, and one in New Haven, Connecticut, the total that he owes, if this is not interrupted or interfered with by saner judicial heads, is $1 billion for expressing an opinion. Now, you and I and a lot of our colleagues are in the opinion expressing business. Should we be afraid to express an opinion? Well, yes. I mean, Alex never set foot in Connecticut. He gives his broadcast in Texas. Yet because he was sued in this hard left state that doesn't care about freedom of speech and where the judges are popularly elected and they want to ride the crest of the wave of popular opinion, public opinion, which in this case was to demonize Alex, they'll change the law to suit public opinion. They'll eviscerate somebody of their basic natural and constitutional rights, and a profound injustice will result. I'm sorry for such a long-winded answer, but the public needs to know what happened here. This was not a trial on the merits. This was a summary determination by a political hack in a black robe who simply said, this is a non-opinion. George Orwell warned about the change in human life because of the change in the meaning of words.
Yeah, Judge, we love to have you on the show, and certainly we bring you here on to hear your opinions on that one. So, rant all you want for as long as you want. It also gives me a nice little break. You can send a text to the show. You can text the show at 573-319-1586. One listener texted in with a question here, Judge, a statement, but I think it actually leads to a good question. He said Alex Jones said the parents were lying, though. There is the defamation component. Is that the case?
That's the case as the plaintiffs see it. The case as the Constitution sees it is that free speech trumps these defamation rights because it's a matter of public interest about which you can say anything. If this were a private matter and he accused the parents of lying, that would be a different story. But when the parents go on public on the public airways themselves in order to affect the public opinion, they are what's called limited purpose public figures, and they are fair game. And opinion allows you to say whatever you want. A person whose philosophical works you and I admire very much, though he was an economist, the late great Professor Murray Rothbard, argued that there should be no libel, slander, and defamation cases, that you should literally be able to say whatever you want, and ideas and thoughts should rise in the marketplace of ideas, not in a courtroom. I'm not quite there. Before I was on the bench, my career was devoted to defending the First Amendment rights of media publications, and I defended publications from the New York Times down to an old left-wing rag called the Soho News. By the way, I became great friends with the people that ran that thing. But the issue is, which is the greater good? The salvation of a person's reputation, or the freedom to speak your mind on a matter of public interest. And in my view, the Supreme Court in Brandenburg, which is the leading Supreme Court case that the Connecticut courts rationalize themselves around, says the greater good is the right to speak your mind on a matter of public interest.
Now, Judge, knowing that the possibility is that this could go to the Supreme Court, and knowing the ideological makeup of the Supreme Court, do you think that there's a good chance that this will be overturned and that Alex will be exonerated?
I do. This court has been very, very pro First Amendment. And the leader of that First Amendment movement on the court is the Chief Justice. So I think he would clearly be with the conservatives. There might even be one or two from the left wing of the court who will see this purely as a matter of free speech rather than as a matter of public outrage. If public outrage is the standard, then you and I are, and all of our colleagues, from Alex Jones to Tim Pool to Joe Rogan to Dave Rubin, we're all out of business because we're in the business of stirring the pot and causing people to look at issues from a human rights. The human is responsible. Government is the negation of liberty from that perspective. So the First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech from all levels of government, local, state, federal, and from all branches of the government, legislative, executive, judicial. Okay, a judge can stop you from giving a speech in the courtroom. The police can stop you from using a sound truck in a residential neighborhood at 3 a.m. I get it. There's a time, place, and manner for speech. But on your own show, on a matter of public interest, you should be free to speak your mind. That's not me. That's Brandenburg versus Ohio, the seminal Supreme Court opinion on this.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Judge Andrew Napolitano. He is the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which you can download on any of your devices, as well as a weekly column at judgenap.com. His column this week will deal with this issue we're discussing right now. Now, Judge, I'm not sure if you're as familiar with Kanye West now being sued by the family of George Floyd for his comments. Kanye West came out this week and said that George Floyd died of fentanyl poisoning, not because Derek Chauvin put his knee on his neck. He's now being sued for $100 million by the family of George Floyd. Do you have an opinion on that case?
It should be summarily dismissed for two reasons. One, it's an opinion on a matter of public interest. Two, George Floyd's family has already, they've suffered greatly, but they've already experienced their increase in wealth from the city of Minneapolis because of what happened. So they have no losses. George Floyd is dead, and there's really no cognizable plaintiff in this case. If they think a dead man's reputation is worth money when they've already been paid for his death, that's a bizarre twist on the law. As for the substance of what he said, there's some evidence for that. The substance of what he said was offered in the defense case. I believe that the defendant was quite properly convicted and quite properly sentenced, and his behavior was horrific, murderous, and both outcomes were just. The civil case brought by the George Floyd family and the criminal case brought by the feds and the state, although I'm not in favor of the feds and the state bringing criminal cases on the same matter. I think that's a violation of double jeopardy. Nevertheless, the first case, the state case, produced a just outcome. But you can't defame the dead. That's clear in American jurisprudence.
Yes, and that if you could defame the dead, then everything we've said about FDR would get us in a lot of trouble. If you're just tuning into the show, we're just speaking to Judge Andrew Napolitano right now, and you can text us at 573-319-1586 if you have a question for the judge. Judge, I'd like to delve into big brain territory, to go back into like a philosophical discussion, especially specifically related to Alex Jones. I'm not sure if you heard some of the comments that that he made recently. He went on a show with Steven Crowder, another conservative pundit, and they both came out very recently, very strongly against libertarians, people like you and me. Alex Jones said specifically that because of the behavior of libertarians in recent years, that he and Steven Crowder agreed with him, are now anti-libertarians, opposed to libertarianism. Yeah, and I see your facial expression on that. It was something that I guess didn't surprise me, because we've seen a lot of people, Judge, that came in during the Ron Paul years turn against us, turn against our ideas, and join this new populist movement because they claim that libertarianism doesn't offer the kind of strength that's needed to fight, in the face of leftist tyranny, that the answer to it is a form of right-wing tyranny. Alex Jones has embraced this. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I didn't know that he had done that, and I'm sorry to hear it. I think I know him pretty well, and his views are quite libertarian. He may disagree with the, if you'll forgive this phrase, mainstream libertarian movements in the country, the remnants of the Ron Paul movement, this crowd that wants to run Dave Smith for president of the United States. Nothing against Dave. I love the guy, but I think that's the people that he is, the group that he's objecting to. But in turn, and I can't really get into his head on this, Alex sometimes changes his mind. He and I disagreed profoundly on whether Donald Trump was worthy to be president from the basis of his human character. Alex now says that Donald Trump is not worthy to be president on the basis of his human character, not on the basis of his views. I mean, I've disagreed with libertarians on this, calling Trump an authoritarian, which is the opposite of a libertarian. But we know that if you reject the idea of natural human rights, that our rights come from our humanity, that the highest right is the right to live, that the individual is sovereign and not the state, that government consists of negating liberty, that government is just a monopoly of force in a geographical area. This brings you to totalitarianism. This brings you to the march away from liberty, which Jefferson predicted in one of his last letters to John Adams shortly before the two of them died, and which we have seen as a steady, slow march ever since then. Government grows and liberty shrinks. Without a liberty movement, without people who recognize that the individual is sovereign and not the state, democracy will fall of its own weight. People will use the government to grab as many goodies as they can from everybody else, and there will be no liberty left. And then we'll start all over again. Your grandchildren may very well see the collapse of the federal government and the country breaking off into smaller republics. And because they will have been taught by you, they will know to go to the republic where there's the most liberty.
Judge, and one final sort of conversation, starter on this one before I let you go. Again, big brain stuff, the kind of insider knowledge that I think, that you don't get in a lot of other podcasts. But have you noticed this, Judge? This is an observation that I've made, and I've been, fighting for liberty for about 15 years now, since I, first got into the movement to support Congressman Ron Paul. But what I notice is
many of those happy years we fought side by side.
That's right, and we still are, Judge. But one of the things that I notice is that you'll have people who will come into the libertarian movement, and they will get frustrated with the amount of progress that's being made over, 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and they will then go and embrace authoritarianism. They will go and embrace authoritarian ideologies, and they will come in as libertarians, but they will go out as authoritarians. Is this a trend that you have noticed as well? Because it's deeply concerning to me to see so many former friends, looking at us as if we are naive for holding on to these principles of liberty that they claim to espouse, but because the timeline hasn't been fast enough, they go and embrace, either left-wing socialism or right-wing socialism.
I'm sorry to say that I agree with you. They are tired of waiting for the government to be dialed back, and so they want their share of goodies that government gives away. I think a lot of people on January 6th were libertarians who just had lost their patience, and they were willing to engage in violence in order to prevent the peaceful transfer of government. I was ashamed of them and deeply disappointed when I learned that I knew some of them. I don't know what the answer to this is, Austin, other than the patient discussion of these things like we're doing now. But libertarianism in the modern era in America was at its peak when it had a hero, and the hero was utterly, utterly faithful to first principles, and that was Ron Paul. Now, Ron Paul is semi-retired now, and I'm sorry to say that libertarianism needs another hero. The reason I say I'm sorry to say it is that I don't believe in the great man version of liberty, because that leads to too much power in the hands of the great man. But a truly great man would lead his people to a place of liberty and then eschew the power that they want to give to him, because power resides and comes from the human heart. It doesn't come from the collective.
This is the Cincinnatus theory of government, right? The George Washington theory of government, and this really is the heart of it, Judge. You've nailed this, because I've been trying to have this discussion with so many former libertarians, calling themselves now populists or national conservatives, because they say that what's the point of having power if you don't use it? They look at conservatives and libertarians who gain power, who win elections, who then don't go out there and force their vision of society on others, and they claim that people like us are weak, because they say, what's the point of having power if you don't use it? But I mean, they don't think about what George Washington did. They don't think of the the society of Cincinnatus, right? And that story. But I mean, that truly is what separates the good men from evil, isn't it? Isn't that the basis for what we determine, who are the good guys versus the bad guys?
I'll give you a good example today of an heir to Ron Paul, and that's Congressman Thomas Massie. Congressman Thomas Massie is so faithful to first principles, even if what the Congress is attempting to do is objectively correct, proper, and good. If it's not authorized by the Constitution, Congressman Massie will vote against it. So the libertarians that have left the movement to become national conservatives, a phrase that terrifies me because it's got intimations of telling people how to live, in their hearts would agree with Massie. But Massie is a superb gold standard example of eschewing power, not using power to tell others how to live, but keeping power in its place. Ron Paul was the same. There are very, very few human beings. The traditional Christians believe that Jesus on the cross eschewed power. He could have used his power to slay his enemies, but he didn't, because he knew greater good would come from his own sacrifice. Thomas Massie, Ron Paul, you or I, if we were voting with them, would be of the same view. We're not going to tell people how to live. We're not going to disrupt the federal structure. We're not going to take back human liberty because we have a better idea of life than others do. The individual is sovereign. The government is a negation of liberty. That government is best which governs least, and that government is better which governs not at all.
Absolutely. That's Judge Andrew Napolitano, the host of the Judging Freedom Podcast.
I took Jefferson to an extreme.
That is great stuff, Judge. We love you very much.
What an intellectual feast it is to have these conversations with you, Austin, as we once had at your cubicle or at my couch at Fox News for a couple of years.
Maybe again one day. Judge Napolitano, host of the Judging Freedom Podcast. You can download it on any of your mobile devices. Read his weekly column at judgenap.com. Judge, thank you for your time today.
All the best, Austin. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. We'll talk to him again next Wednesday, of course, at 8 a.m. Central Time. Judge Napolitano's great interviews. What do you think about that? Did you like it? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. You don't get that anywhere else. When we come back, we'll talk to Missouri State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick about him pulling out Missourians' pension funds from Blackrock over their ESG policies. Another great interview and a conversation you won't hear anywhere else. Not on the mainstream media, not on the alternative media, only here on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
American conservatism is distinct, like America is distinct from the United Kingdom. American conservatism's roots comes out of the Wild West, out of pioneerism. The difference between American conservatives and European conservatives is that Americans are cowboys. We are that God, guns, gold, and girls. It's wild here. And we should stay that way. We shouldn't allow a European version of conservatism to come and infect us here. We like it wide open spaces here, deep in the heart of Texas and all that.
Wife. I want to thank you all for watching the Wake Up America Show with Austin Petersen. This show has been a huge venture for our family, so we would love it if you could join us. I believe in liberty, and I believe in Austin's ability to spread the ideas of liberty. Do you? I want to ask you today to join Petersen's Patriots with a pledge of $17.76 a month. Help us to stay cancel-proof so we can spread the message of limited government across the country. I joined Petersen's Patriots myself, just in a little different way. Visit wakeupAmericaShow.com/support and make your pledge today.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion, delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Display proudly on your coffee table, or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
Speaker Pelosi's husband, Paul, made a big investment in chips just before Congress votes on a bill that would give $52 billion in subsidies and tax credits to the chip industry.
Over the course of your career, has your husband ever made a stock purchase or sale based on information he received from you?
No.
And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back. Do not come. Do not come.
Have you ever received a royalty payment from a company that you later oversaw money going to that company?
You know, I don't know as a fact, but I doubt it.
Well, here's the thing is, why don't you let us know?
I've got two political news stories for you that you might not have heard about yet because mainstream media was too busy covering clickbait and hate porn. First up, New York City's Metropolitan Transportation Authority became the most recent U.S. city to contract with Cubic Corporation for their tap-to-pay technology in their public transit systems. But here's the thing. Cubic Corporation is also a longtime contractor with the United States military. In fact, one of the corporation's subsidiaries specializes in and supplies counterintelligence and cybersecurity software to government agencies. Since the early 1990s, the American government has awarded billions of dollars to this company in military contracts, and one of its biggest contracts came in 2020, when the Pentagon awarded nearly $200 million for work on training systems, and over half of that money was sent to foreign military sales in places including Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Singapore. Story number 2. According to a policy update obtained by reporters, the Army has allowed dogs, cats, primates, and marine animals to be shot for research. But first, a little background on this one. In 1983, a whistleblower revealed a Pentagon plan to purchase dogs from an animal shelter, in addition to using other animals like pigs and goats, and shoot them with military weapons so that doctors in training could study their wounds. The veterinarian in charge of the animals at the time said that doctors should be, quote, introduced to wound care here, rather than during the first wave of casualties off the battlefield. Since those reports went public in 1983, there has been a ban on using dogs and cats in wound care labs. The policy update reported on in recent weeks says that although it may be prohibited to wound dogs, cats, primates, and marine animals for training purposes, it may be permissible to wound them for research, development, and evaluation. The Army has subsequently denied a public information request for more details about this particular medical research practice, citing national security and foreign policy.
Good morning. It's 8:34, and you're watching the Wake Up America show with Austin Petersen at wakeupAmericaShow.com. Glad to have you here. You can text us in at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. My next guest is the man of the hour. Big story yesterday. Missouri has pulled $500 million in state pension funds managed by Blackrock over the company's environmental and social priorities. These are those ESGs that we've been talking about. Now, here he is joining us, Missouri State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick on the line. Good morning, Scott. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Sure. So give us a little bit of an update here. What's the story? $500 million in Missouri state pensions. How does this operate? How are you able to make this decision, and why did you make this decision?
Well, it's actually a board decision. So the pension funds are managed outside of the state treasury. I'm on the board of the state employee retirement system. It's different from the money in the treasury, where I'm the sole fiduciary and can just say, hey, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. So this was actually a process that the board undertook, where essentially we became concerned that our assets were being managed in a way that prioritized non-financial matters over their fiduciary responsibility to provide the best return on investment. So that when we say non-financial matters, that's where ESG comes in. We're talking about environmental issues, social issues that really have no business being advanced in the corporate world. These are more political issues that should be dealt with in the political system. And so we had concerns about how our assets were being used to advance those causes. And we told Blackrock, hey, we don't want you to vote our shares. We want you to abstain from voting while we come up with a proxy voting policy that we're going to implement. BlackRock said they would not do that for us. So we basically said, okay, well, we're going to take our assets out. So that's what we did.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Scott Fitzpatrick. He's Missouri State Treasurer, and he announced yesterday that Missouri pension funds would be divested from the company Blackrock. which has an ESG policy that's been much the subject of debate, environmental, social, and governance policies. So just to kind of break this down, Scott, essentially what you're saying is that the concern was, and the reason that this was a legitimate, pulling of funds from this company is because they were not focused on the financial goals of the pension holders. They were focused on all of these political goals, and that could put the funds at risk.
Yeah, essentially what's happened is the political left has turned to corporate America to try to implement their agenda, and they can't get it done legislatively, so they're trying to use corporate America to advance their causes. And BlackRock is the largest manager of assets in the world. They have now that the big sell-off is kind of underway, it's down to about $8 trillion in assets under management, which is more than any other firm in the country or in the world. And they're using that muscle that they've amassed by virtue of managing and speaking on behalf of other people's money to basically try to advance these causes. And it's largely a response to the pressure that they've received from people on the political left to force climate mandates or emissions mandates on companies that really don't have much to do with the energy issue or anything like that. They've forced like DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion audits on companies. These are very expensive mandates that these companies are being forced to comply with because you have activist type investors managing this money like BlackRock who are pushing them into doing these things. And it's not good for shareholders. And that's the biggest problem with it.
If you're just tuning in, you can see we're speaking to Scott Fitzpatrick. He's Missouri State Treasurer, talking about BlackRock and ESGs. So when they force these diversity, equity, and inclusion proposals on these companies, essentially what they're doing is asking for, or essentially intimidating companies that work with them into accepting the goals of the Democratic Party. Would that be a fair statement?
Sure. I mean, the way it works is when a company or when an asset manager has the ability to vote on behalf of the people whose money they're managing, they can call up the CEO of that company and say, listen, if you don't do this, if you don't adopt these scope 3 emissions limits, then we're just going to vote for different directors to your board who are going to fire you. And so when you're a company like BlackRock that owns 10% of all the companies in the S&P 500, that's a big threat. I mean, look what Elon Musk was able to do with Twitter by just buying 9% of Twitter. The whole world was lit on fire, right? And the thing is, when you take BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, which are the largest 3 asset managers, when you take those 3 together, they own about 20% of every company in the S&P 500. And so that is a lot when they act together. And then here's the other big thing is they own a bunch of each other. Right? BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street own each other's stock. Vanguard's privately held, but they all own each other. And so they're kind of pushing each other to act in the same way. And it's a really bizarre situation where, they're acting in concert, and that has a huge impact on the operations of these companies.
And you're not alone. There are other Republican treasurers in other states that have decided to make this move with you. Is Missouri the first one, though, to actually go through with it, or have other states already accomplished this as well? Where are the other states in the process?
So, the very first state to do anything was Texas. And it was a couple years ago, and they passed a law that basically said, you can't, basically if you're boycotting energy or if you're boycotting oil, you can't do business with the state of Texas. And it's kind of an interesting situation because it's really not what they're doing. They're not boycotting, because the original kind of version of ESG was we're gonna not own these bad stocks, what they would call bad stocks, like an oil company or an Exxon. We're not going to own that company. Now, instead of that, they're saying, well, we're going to own them, but we're going to force them to change their behavior, right? And so BlackRock would say, we're not boycotting energy. We're making energy change the way that they're operating. We're going to make them divest of their oil and gas products, and they're going to do more renewable energy. So that's really what's going on there, and that's the big issue.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking to Missouri State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick. You can text the show at 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. We're talking about the decision to divest Missouri State pension funds from Blackrock over their environmental, social, and governance policies. Now, Scott, one of the other complaints that many people have had about Blackrock is their business practices when it comes to purchasing housing in these states and their consolidation of their real estate portfolios that have made affordable housing out of reach for many Americans. Have you been tracking that issue as well, and did that factor in at all in this decision?
No, it has not really factored into the decision. They're investing in housing or real estate. It was really primarily about their failure to prioritize fiduciary duty over non-pecuniary or non-financial matters. I think that is, there's been some newer reporting on large hedge funds or large asset managers or private equity funds buying up lots of single family homes. And it's part of what's driven the cost of real estate up so high, is you've got all this capital looking for a home, and they've started to look at the single family home industry and started, buying those up. So it's kind of an interesting challenge or an interesting problem that's on the forefront here on the horizon.
Scott, is there anything else about this issue that you think that our listeners should know before we let you go?
Well, I think it's worth looking at. Obviously, state pension plans, state treasurers, and other large institutional managers have a big impact on this issue and where they decide to keep their money. But the reality is retail investors do too. And I think that everybody, who has a retirement account, who has a 401k or an IRA, should be looking at where they're keeping that money, who's managing it on their behalf, and how those people are speaking to the companies on their behalf and how they're voting on issues on their behalf. Because that's really what it comes down to is people are thinking, well, this is our taxpayer money, but think about your own money. Think about how it's being used and what advocacy is taking place on your behalf with your money.
Yeah, well. I have to say, and I think on behalf of the listeners who are very limited government conservative and libertarian types who listen to my show, I just want to say thank you, Scott. We appreciate you standing up for the good people, the citizens of Missouri and the United States. We appreciate you fighting for conservative principles. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Thank you very much. That's Missouri State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick, who just joined us on the line. Did you like the interview? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. When we get back, marijuana use becoming more common with young adults, more common than you might think. We're going to talk about that. Some research that came out. We'll discuss it on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupamericashow.com.
Hello, my name is Kelvin. Welcome to Frenchy Bush. This is my Didi's website. Now I've decided to speak to you with my real voice for the first time ever to tell you about how cool Frenchy Bush is. But I've decided that this is the perfect opportunity to share with you. Frenchy Bush is a good website. You should follow us on socials. If you like Frenchies or any kind of bulldogs, me and my new brother George are going to try to make your life more fun.
Hello, I'm George. My neck isn't really thick yet, but it will be. We are so glad you're here. Please ignore my floating eyeball. It helps me spot predators who might be approaching from the sides.
Didi made Frenchy bullshit to review things that he uses on me and my brother to tell you if it's good or bullshit. Take this collar, for example. Didi really likes it. Didi said it's really handy because us Frenchies got thick necks. Need something really tough. People think Frenchies are little, but if you look at us from below, you can see we are really pretty buff. Beefcake. Yes. Look at my creamy thighs and chest. Yes. You like that?
Big brother, please focus.
Frenchy Bush. Please follow us for more great content and read the Frenchy Bush blog for more fun and cool stuff.
I'm a public defender.
I am a public defender.
I'm proud to be a public defender.
80% of Americans accused of a crime will get appointed a public defender.
Everybody from a speeding ticket to capital murder.
For every dollar we spend on public defenders, we spend $3 on prosecutors.
Public defenders have to do pretty much everything on their own.
Social workers, counselors.
Investigating is another piece of it.
The average public defender holds 300 cases annually.
You never feel like there's enough time.
Public defenders have health issues all the time.
A lot of people give up and say, I can't do this work anymore.
Gideon's Promise trains, mentors, and supports public defenders.
There are a lot of people who say that they would not still be public defenders, but for Gideon's Promise.
It's fueled me to continue on in this fight.
Gideon's Promise has changed the face of public defense.
People see us as troublemakers.
Good trouble only.
We don't make it easy. It should not be easy to take away someone's liberty.
Ever hear the one about the frog? Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out.
Here's my resume again.
But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog will boil. It's a lie. But as a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans,
Do you have any real-world experience?
it's a story that rings true. We make excuses for how we feel. We push everything down. We tell ourselves the lie that it's easier to stay in that boiling water, to disconnect. And some days, maybe it is. But you've never been interested in easy. Make no mistake, reaching out is hard. Do it anyway. You're not alone. You've got this. You are not a frog.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Good morning, Rise and Freedom. It's 8:49, and you're watching and listening to the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com. I just got to say, today has been fantastic. Great interviews. Judge Napolitano, Missouri State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick, John Miltimore from the Foundation for Economic Education, and you got me. We've had a lot of viewers, too, this morning. I think we've had well over 50 people watching us live amongst all the different platforms. Today being Wednesday, that means it's on Rumble, and we've got people on YouTube. There was like 30 people watching live on Rumble, and then like 20 people over on YouTube, and between Facebook and Twitter and a few others, which probably might be as high as 75 people watching live. That's great. And if you're watching or listening to us later, we super appreciate you. I hope you'll join us while we're live. We try and do a different social network every day to try and grow the support. Now, usually on Thursdays, I would say, hey, join me on, my website, wakeupAmericaShow.com. Certainly, there are a few people who do watch us over on the show. That's probably the least. It's a little clunky, that interface, and I'd like to work on it a little bit more. So if you don't mind, and I know this is going to throw some people off, but tomorrow, would you join us over on YouTube? Let's do YouTube Thursday tomorrow. We'll all join over there, because I'm trying to get to monetization over there. You have to have 4,000 hours of people watching your show in order to get monetized on YouTube. And I'm not quite there yet. Let's check and see where we're at. I'd like to get to the point where we can support the show on my own website. 2,109 public watch hours over on YouTube. And I'm trying to get to 4,000. That's a lot. It's a lot. So how about tomorrow? We'll all go over to YouTube. I would appreciate that. Let's go. Congrats, Austin. Only up from here, says Sarah Palacios. Sarah, we certainly appreciate you very much. Thanks. Let's make tomorrow YouTube Thursday. And don't forget, Friday I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. I'm going to be on Tim Pool's show. I'm going to try and do a show for you on Friday. It might be an audio-only show. Sorry about that. It might be no show at all. I don't know yet. I'm not sure because I'm not sure what my travel schedule is going to be exactly on Friday morning, but I'm going to try and do a full show for you Friday morning. It's just I will be in Washington, D.C. because I'll be on Timcast. What do you think about that? Pretty exciting, huh? Federal marijuana rules changing. We're all having a discussion about smoking weed, and marijuana use is becoming a new normal among young adults. I know, that's how some of you feel about it. More than 2/5 of young men and women now use cannabis, at least on occasion. More than 2/5. That's quite high, actually. This is according to a new study that was posted over at The Hill. Young women are a big part of the growth as a gender gap on the use of marijuana closes. Used to be mostly men. Across the entire adult population, marijuana may have hit an all-time high. What do you think about that? Cannabis users may soon be a majority among young adults in D.C. and several pot-friendly states. This is a trend that points to a potential future of destigmatized marijuana across much of the nation. More than 2/5 of young men and women nationwide now use cannabis, at least on occasion, according to federal data. This is a quotient that has risen steadily in a decade of relentless legalization. Much of the trend, though, is being driven by young women who have all but closed a decades-long gender gap in marijuana use. Young cannabis users actually outnumber abstainers in the state of Vermont, where recreational became fully legal only this month. Young marijuana patrons are nearing majorities in Colorado, where cannabis has been legal for a decade, and in Washington, D.C., where the drug trades on a nebulous gray market. They are also reaching a majority in Oregon, where recreational sales commenced 5 years ago. Allison of Silver Spring, Maryland, says that it helps her with sleep. That's one of 5 states with recreational cannabis members on the fall ballot. Of course, Missouri is one of those as well. She says that it's great for stress and anxiety, she said, and my generation has huge anxiety problems. See, from my experience of people that I know that use it, it's only increased their anxiety and made it harder for them to sleep. But, it probably drugs affect people in different ways. And for those who would know, they would say, oh, well, an indica is not going to make you feel the same way as a sativa. But I honestly have absolutely no idea. What do you think? Send us a text, 573-319-1586. Someone texted in and said that it beats prescriptions, in my humble opinion. They've used it since college. Yeah, whatever floats your boat, whatever makes you feel better. And, provided that you harm no one else, you ought to be able to do as you please. They say that they are productive and fairly sane. I like that caveat, fairly, there. My belief is this, that the reason why marijuana use is becoming more prevalent amongst young adults is because it's cool now, and it's not just destigmatized, but it's cool now because it's starting to get legalized. But here's my guess, and you can check me on this if I'm wrong, but you'll have to do so a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. My belief is that use of it will probably go down over the years as people grow less enamored with it. More and more, I believe people will probably see it as something, just like beer or wine or anything else. It will sort of lose that sexiness factor. Sure, you will see young people who, once it's legal for them, they reach the age of attainment, they will, engage in those kinds of behaviors. But my belief is that once it's legal, it's no longer as exciting or as sexy as it used to be, which is one of the arguments that I believe, stands for full legalization of all drugs for consenting adults. And that really is the key, isn't it? Adults. No heroin for 5-year-olds. I know, libertarians. You want to give the heroin to the 5-year-olds. I got to go. It's been a great show. This has been awesome. Jose Palacios, Matt Unruly, Tony Allegra, Sarah Palacios, Rare Camellia, Chris Morrill, all of our awesome friends over on the live stream. Send us a thanks. Hey, like the show, right? Give us a like. If you're on Facebook, wherever it is, give us a like. Now is the time to support the show. Give us a like. All I'm asking for, just like the show. If you're on YouTube, right? Share it would be awesome, right? But if you're on Rumble, give it a rumble, right? If you're over on Twitch, I don't know, gift us a subscription. wherever you're at this morning, support the show. These interviews don't come easy and they don't come cheap. They all come right out of my pocket, unless you're a financial supporter, in which case you're helping to make this show happen. I hope you enjoy it. We work very hard. By we, it's me and the people who are financial supporters to bring this content to you. I hope you support us with a like and a subscribe at AP for Liberty on all the social networks, Stream Liberty over on Twitch. Appreciate you very much. Y'all have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupamericashow.com.
And stronger and better.
I like shooting things, but whenever I can't shoot something, I like to cut things. My life isn't all about shooting and stabbing and cutting, though. Sometimes I have to do actual work, but when I work, I still like to have fun. And there's nothing less fun than trying to cut with a crappy knife. Thankfully, from the ancient sect of Christian knights, who also loved cutting and stabbing, comes a new implement that has received my personal blessing, the Templar knife. Like the ancient sword of Excalibur, you don't choose a Templar knife, it chooses you. You just decide what kind you want on the website first, however, and then order it online, and then it chooses you. The Templar knife comes in a variety of shapes. As a man of culture and taste, I have decided I will never use a terrible knife again. And thanks to the inspiration provided by this excellent product, I have decided to launch a new crusade against anyone using less than superior knives. Join me, brothers and sisters, by visiting uppercuttactical.com/pages/Templar-knives. That's a lot of slashes. For that, you'll need a Templar knife. For 10% off, use code AP for Liberty and join me in a quest for glory, for liberty, for Christendom, for the Templar knife. Get yours today.
Fire.
Your printing company stinks. They charge you too much money and they don't love America enough. We've got the solution. Patriot Printing USA. Whether you're running for office, saving souls, or just need business cards that will get you the new job you've been looking for, Patriot Printing USA has got you covered with the best prices around. Palm cards, brochures, bumper stickers, door hangers, you name it, we've got it. PatriotPrintingUSA.com. That's PatriotPrintingUSA.com.
Want an engaging website to boost your business? You're just a click away from 5-star Fiverr talent. Hundreds of freelancer skills like web design. Head to Fiverr.com today and get something started.
Average Americans are turning into conspiracy theorists at an unprecedented rate. Flip City Magazine was created for new converts to aid in their in-depth research along the path of absolute truth. We offer the hardest-hitting news and opinion delivered uncensored in print directly to your door. Displayed proudly on your coffee table or hide discreetly under your mattress. Flip City is the magazine they don't want you to see, much less read. Subscribe to Flip City Magazine today at flipcitymag.com.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
It is better to settle these matters in the courts than on the streets, and new laws are needed at every level. But law alone cannot make men see right.